Coming into today's primary races, most of the focus of the national media was centered on the Democrats, mostly the Senate race in Pennsylvania between Arlen Specter and Joe Sestak, now won by Joe Sestak. But it's not like stuff was boring on the Republican side. In Kentucky's Republican Senate primary, Rand Paul, son of Republican Congressman Ron Paul, easily defeated his main opponent, Trey Grayson, who Senate Minority Leader, former Vice President Dick Cheney, and who the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, former Vice President Dick Cheney, and the Republican Party establishment all had lined up behind. Then there was the Republican House primary in Kentucky's 3rd District. The Republican Party establishment pick in that race was a gentleman named Jeff Reitz. He was endorsed by the National Republican Congressional Committee. In that race, Mr. Reitz not only didn't win, he wasn't even the runner-up. He finished a distant 3rd. What happened there? But perhaps the most important result of the night for the Republican Party was the race to fill the seat of the late Democratic Congressman Jack Murtha in Pennsylvania. This is a seat that Republicans thought they could pick up tonight, and they spent a lot of money trying to do so. But within the last hour, that race was called for the Democrat in the race, Mark Kritz, a failure acknowledged by the defeated GOP candidate Tim Burns just moments ago.
This is a failure, but there are a lot of lessons to be learned here. Okay, there are a lot of lessons to be learned here.
Joining us now is a spokesman for the Republican National Committee, Doug Heye. Mr. Heye, thanks very much for joining us. Really looking forward to having the chance to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So when Tim Burns said tonight there are lessons to be learned from that Pennsylvania 12 race won by the Democrat tonight, do you think he's right? Do you think there are obvious lessons there?
I think win or lose in any election, there are lessons to be learned. And, you know, one of the things we learned was the real structural advantage the Democrats had. And I have to tip your hat, or I have to tip my hat if I were wearing one, to Ed Rendell. It was very smart of him to schedule the special election on the same day as the Democratic primary in the Senate and governor's race. You know, when Monty Hall chooses, you know, what's behind curtain number 3, it's because he knows what's behind curtain number 3. And Ed Rendell certainly knew the turnout that would happen for Democrats today. And I think it was a smart move politically for him. But we'll be in this fight again in November, and I think our chances are really good there.
Now, this loss in Pennsylvania is the 7th straight competitive special House race that Republicans have lost since 2008. And they can't all be blamed on Ed Rendell, although it would be fun to try to do that, especially in person with him. Are you concerned about House Republicans overall and their momentum heading into November?
No, not at all. You know, we've got a special election in Hawaii that's coming up this weekend with Charles DeJoux, who's a really strong candidate. And, you know, it's not just House races. We've got Senate races, and we've had Senate special elections. Obviously, all of America knows who Scott Brown is because of his amazing come-from-behind election in Massachusetts, which was a special election.
Scott Brown's endorsement not doing any help, though, in Pennsylvania 12 today. That said, though, a lot of excitement on the Republican side for the Rand Paul win, just because, for no other reason, that it was such a decisive win in the Kentucky Senate primary. Now, I know there's a lot. Everybody's been having this discussion about Republican establishment versus the sort of Tea Party and Ron Paul movement-supported candidacy there. But I want to ask you about the possibility of the Republican establishment really coming together behind Rand Paul for the fall. It's hard for me to imagine that just because I feel like I've seen so much friction between the Republican Party and the Ron Paul movement in the past.
Well, I can tell you, being at the RNC, there's no friction with us, with Ron Paul and his supporters. You know, we've got a choice as a party. We either grow or we die. And really, Kentucky shows us a good opportunity there with the decisive victory. And I know I can't speak for Senator McConnell, but I know he wants to win in November. And my guess is you'll see Senator McConnell and Rand Paul at some kind of a unity event in the next few days to emphasize that they are campaigning together and that this is a seat that we can win. And one thing that really has been ignored over the past few weeks is the Democrats really had that tough primary in Kentucky, is that Rand Paul polled against both of them, whether it was Mangiardo or Jack Tuff from the old YouTube video, Jack Conway, that he's polled ahead of them. And so he's in a strong position to win. Our party is enthusiastic, and whether you talk about Pennsylvania, Kentucky, or Arkansas, or even my home state of North Carolina, Democrats are divided. They have runoffs and primaries that just get right down the middle, and that's not a good position for them to be in.
What was the name that you just called Jack Conway?
Jack Tough. If you go to YouTube and you look up Jack Conway, Jack Tough, somebody put out a pretty good web ad out there that I think your viewers will probably enjoy. I know I sure did.
Are you endorsing that for the RNC?
It's not ours. I'd love to know who did it because I thought it was funny. And, you know, there are a lot of these. Lee Fisher just had one of these videos come out that I think your network showed pretty strongly. But Jack Tough is a good one that people should see.
You are the communications director for the RNC, using that nickname against him repeatedly on TV. I'll give you one last chance to disown it. If you want to.
We're not disowning anything. It's a good web ad, and we think people should see it. But I'll tell you one thing that I think is really important, and you were mentioning this with Andrea earlier, is we saw the White House really go out of their way in the last day or two to distance themselves and really trash Arlen Specter's campaign. And as a Yankees fan, I'll tell you, it was deja vu all over again for me. We saw them do it with Martha Coakley. We saw them do it to Cray Deeds in Virginia. We saw them do it in New Jersey with John Corzine. And, you know, in Washington, you sometimes say that the most dangerous place to be is between a politician and a camera. But it really appears that it might be between Barack Obama and a bus if you're a Democrat, because he'll throw you under that bus if you're losing. And that sends a real strong message to candidates and to their donors. Well,
thinking about the splits between the parties, I think everybody's looking forward to seeing what happens between Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell. If there is going to be a unity event, I will owe you, sometime in the next couple of days, I will owe you a beer and look forward to buying it for you in person, Doug. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Rachel.
Doug Heye is Communications Director for the Republican National Committee. We finally got somebody from the RNC to come on the show. Yes!